Welcome to the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast, where we explore the future and what this means for your leadership. We ask the big questions. What's happening on the horizon? What does this mean for us? And most importantly, what skills do I need now for leadership of the future? It's time to explore. Let's go.
Well, hello, this is Zoe, and this is the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast. And there's interesting things happening on planet Human. In India, dun, 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 guess what has been banned from the educational textbooks? Sources of energy, the periodic table and evolution, and environmental sustainability. If you're going, what the? So was I. It turns out that these bans have been put in place to encourage curiosity and experiential learning. Really? When you dig into it, Nature magazine suggests that the organization Rashtriyan Swayamsevak Sangh, otherwise known as RSS, which has ties to one of the political parties, is concerned that science is a threat to Hinduism. And they have advanced and promoted the banning of these particular concepts from education across India. Oh my goodness. So what is this? I think what this could mean is that this is the culture wars front and center in India. Conservatism versus liberalism. It's not even liberalism. It's conservatism versus science and modernism, really. So who knows where this will go? It's not a good sign for other things that are happening in India, the rise of Modi as an autocratic leader and the clamping down of many freedoms across India. So this is a concern. There's a lot of people in India. This will affect a lot of young people moving forward. So watch this space. On planet Zoe, things are a lot less chaotic. Terra Blanca, the prequel to the Olympus Project, is now with the proofreader. So we are edging closer to a release. I actually released the sneak peek look at the cover. It's on my website. If you go to zoerouth.com, click on books, click on bookish, you'll see the cover design there, which is very exciting. I'm still looking for proofreaders. So if you are interested in either getting an advanced reader copy to leave a review or just have a look, or to proofread, you can email me, zoe@zoerouth.com. If you want to get a copy of the free ebook, sign up to bookish at zoerouth.com, click on books and bookish. That will come out sometime after June once I get it all back formatted and all set up on all the various systems. So it's nudging away, but that's all happening there. So my leadership question for you today is, what is the future of work? Dun, dun, dun. And Jeff Ton is my guest today. He is an author and a speaker. He started his career in IT as a software developer, and he's worked with a range of different industries, including banking, electronics, consumer electronics, real estate, not-for-profits, and technology companies. He's a sought-after podcast speaker, a speaker in general, and as an author, as I mentioned. And we have a fabulous conversation about technology and the future of work. Let's do it. Well, all the way from Indianapolis, Indiana, welcome to the show, Jeff Ton.
It is great to be here. I'm excited about our conversation today.
Oh, me too. Not least of which because I saw a picture of you on your website, canoeing. I'm going to ask you about that because canoeing has been a big part of my life. So actually, let's start there because I can't hold back anymore. So what's the nature of your canoeing life, and why do you have a picture of yourself canoeing?
Oh, well, I have fallen in love with canoeing probably, 40 years ago. I just love being out on the water, being a part of the river, understanding how the water's moving within the river, and just try to be out on the water whenever I can. So it's been a huge part of my life, and a huge part of my wife and my relationship has been on a canoe, on a river.
Oh, that's really cool. So do you go for extended trips or just day trips or?
We do everything from day trips to week-long trips. We've not done one longer than a week, but it just depends on where and when. And mostly, well, I'm trying to think, all here in the U.S. I was trying to think, we used to travel a lot to France, but I don't think we ever canoed on any of our trips over there. So I think it's all been here in the U.S.
Lovely. Absolutely lovely. So as a kid growing up, I did canoe trips with my summer camp, a 3-week, 6-week, and then ended up leading trips for that summer camp for 5 years, I think, as well as being head of the canoe tripping program. So yeah, I have a huge affinity and I understand that passion for the water and the adventure that comes with it. So
that's excellent.
Thank you. Thank you for indulging my interest and passion with that.
Oh, absolutely.
And canoeing is a long way from IT in some regards. So how did you get actually interested in IT as a career sector?
I like to say it was an accident. I went to university to major in music theory and composition. And I found out very quickly that you had to have talent, and I did not. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. And that I will date myself and say that's about the time that the Commodore 64 came out. That would have been very early 80s. And I bought one on a lark, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with being able to enter in commands, and this machine would do what I asked it to do most of the time when you ask it the right way. And I just fell in love with writing software and found out that I had a talent for talking with people about business problems they were experiencing and helping them solve that problem through software. And that launched me on a career in technology and never really looked back.
Solving problems with software. So what kinds of problems can you solve with software?
Oh, just about any process problem. I'm of the camp that says you don't do technology for technology's sake. You understand the problem that a business is having, what they're trying to achieve, what their goals are, and then apply technology where it makes sense. So I would say software doesn't solve every problem, but software can do some amazing things, as we've seen most recently with the explosion of ChatGPT and artificial intelligence. So it's got a wide variety of uses throughout an organization.
I agree with that. And we've had a guest on earlier in the show, which talked about the application of AI chatbots to help streamline some of those processes. And largely, the main application I'm seeing at the moment that's easier for businesses to pick up is through customer service chatbots. What do you see as the potential for ChatGPT and other AI applications to solve different AI processes?
I think the possibilities are endless. And I say that with maybe a little bit of caution. You don't want to just let it loose within your organization. I released a podcast episode this week on the podcast that I host it was ChatGPT, a cautionary tale. And it was some of the concerns that you need to at least be aware of when you're using this. But I think back to your question about what you can use it for, I use it almost daily in my business. And I do IT advisory, leadership development, and I use it to do research. Don't take its answers for gospel, right? There are sometimes when it's telling you some information that may not be correct, but it definitely gives you a kickstart in being able to draft a memo, draft a white paper, outline questions that you may want to ask when you're interviewing someone. I think those are the kinds of general uses that we'll start to see people use it in the office to do. You don't want it to replace human. I don't think we're there yet. It can't replace the human interactions that we have. But I think it can help speed up our research, speed up our thought processes when we are trying to be creative.
I agree with that. I think I see it as many people have called it as a co-pilot, and you can bounce ideas off it and build on the ideas. I've been trying to use it to generate jokes for my keynotes.
Is it funny?
It's pretty average, I have to say. So I think I'll flag you like, this is a joke written by ChatGPT.
Yeah, just so you know, so they know it's not yours. Yeah,
That's right. Seinfeld, it is not.
Yes.
So, I mean, at the moment, AI is just generated on what's available on the internet and an amalgamation or deduction based on that. So you use that as a springboard, not as an end result.
Exactly.
You said that you use it for leadership development. Tell me a little bit more of the context around how you would use it for leadership development.
Really, in research, I'll think of a leadership challenge. What's the best response when an employee comes in and resigns? And I'm just making this up, right? And so you can ask it, give me some ideas of how to have that conversation. And I think you can get some good insights asking it questions like that. How would you handle this particular issue? How would you talk to someone about this particular thing? And while I would never use it as a script, it does generate some ideas that you can, I didn't think about that. I'll try that.
I think there's absolute value in the application of tailored AIs that are building on top of ChatGPT. Now, just as you're talking, I'm thinking it would be great to train a chat bot on all of my leadership principles and philosophies. And I've got quite a lot of content. And then you can have people access, coaching with Zoe chat GPT thing. And so if you couldn't access me direct, you could go to my little chat bot. How easy is it to set up something like that?
That requires some training in how to really do that, because you're probably going to be using the APIs that either ChatGPT or Bard or some of the other generative platforms that are out there. Most of them have APIs that you can use. So you're going to need some training on how to interact with those. I don't know that it's something a layperson can do. I've not done it myself. I've only interacted either with the interface that they provide, or speaking of podcasting, I use a tool that sits on top of ChatGPT for my podcast to generate the transcript from the episode. It generates poll quotes for social media and things like that. And it's pretty good. It does a pretty good job, but you're feeding it specific content, right? You're feeding it, here's the recording of this episode. Now tell me what you're hearing in there.
Just curious, which platform are you using for that? I had someone pitch me one of theirs. I'm just curious which one you're using.
Cast Magic.
Cast Magic.
It's pretty good. I can send you a link later if you want.
Definitely. I'll take that up. And also, what's the name of your podcast? Because you mentioned that episode, The Cautionary Tale of AI. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. What's it called?
Sure. So I host a podcast called Status Go. It's for technology professionals that want to break out of the status quo, hence the play on words.
It's so clever. My podcast is so
I did
boring.
not come up with that.
Status quo, that's good. But, it's more innovative than the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast.
I kind of like that one, though.
Well, it can change its flavor, which is, I like shiny objects. So that's, it works underneath that whole umbrella. So back to the future of work. And I know you've done a lot of work thinking about this, seeing that you've been in the sector for a while. How will technology and culture affecting the future of work? What do you see as the impact?
Oh, wow. We have had two huge impacts on the future of work in the last couple of years. We were just talking about ChatGPT and this explosion of these generative AI platforms. I think that is going to fundamentally change the way people work over time. The other one that we experienced worldwide was the pandemic, COVID-19. And here in the U.S., we went through this long process of work from home, being restricted on when you could go into the office and not. And I think what that created is this whole concept of the hybrid workforce, where I don't know that we'll all go back 100% to being in an office. We're going to have some level of flexibility in our workday. We're going to have some flexibility in where we live versus where we work. And I think those two things play together nicely because technology really is what facilitates the ability to have a hybrid work environment and a work from home, a work from anywhere type environment. Think about the platform that you and I are on right now, these video platforms where we can have a conversation across the globe. We could work anywhere and get our jobs, some jobs. And I think what's going to continue to happen is those platforms will continue to improve to make up for some of the things that you miss out on the in-person. The water cooler conversation where you pass someone in a hallway doesn't happen when you're not in the same place. So I think we're going to start to see a growth of platforms that begin to provide similar experiences, not the same experiences to that. I think the other technology that's out there that is going to start impacting the future of work are the virtual reality platforms. And when you think of, we've been hearing about metaverse for years now, but when you start thinking about those platforms and the ability now to render some pretty amazing 3D graphics, we could be having this conversation in 3D in the same spot in France. You and I could both be virtually, you could be there in your home, I could be here in my home, but we could be meeting at some location in France and carrying on a meeting like we were in person. That's amazing technology, and it's going to change the way that we work together.
That would be awesome. At the moment, the big impediment or obstacle is the bloody huge glasses that you have to put, the headsets that you got to put on. And those look very not like something you want to pick up and wear all day. So the other thing I saw, and I wish I'd saved the link for it, it's a video about, there was like a glass see-through panel. And I'm not sure if this is the tech that you're talking about. You sit in front of it and the other person, it's as if they're sitting in the same room with you. Is that the tech that you're talking about? Do you know what that's called?
I don't recall what that particular product is called, but I think those types of technologies are what's going to, we're going to lose the goofy big glasses at some point. It's just going to be part of our environment. Which
would be awesome. I mean, there's so much potential for the whole VR thing, if we can ditch the big headset things, where you could go and for learning and education, let alone, I love the idea of being able to walk around in ancient Rome, which is one of interests of mine, and go, wow, and really experience that, have that whole experience. I mean, movies is one way to do that, where they recreate that. And then to be able to walk around and to walk into temples and to have conversations with Julius Caesar and so on would be...
Right. Be able to touch and feel and yeah.
Yeah, I wish that would hurry up and get here. The water cooler experiences, the tech that you're talking about, is this the similar ones that we've just been discussing? Is that what you mean by, or because we've got online chat platforms and Microsoft Teams, say, for example, that bubble away, but it's something different that you're alluding to?
Well, if I could if I had the idea, I could probably become a bazillionaire. But even with Slack or some of those chat channels or even Zoom calls and things like that, there's an element of you have to schedule it or you're interrupting someone. It's not you and I just happen to be in the same place at the same time, right? We're walking down the hallway at the office and I say, hey, Zoe, what do you think about this project I'm working on? Somehow we're going to create some technology that enables us to be in that virtual hallway in between our meetings, some community space or something that we both choose to be there at the same time. I'm not interrupting you with a Slack chat or, you're not having to throw a Zoom meeting on my schedule. It just happens organically. And I think that's a missing link that we don't have to replace the office just yet.
Yeah. I think, that'll be really interesting to see how that plays out. The conversation about hybrid and office space work versus not, it's still an ongoing tension. There's plenty of corporations that want to go back to getting everybody in the office because it's easier. It's easier to build relationships. It's easier to collaborate. It's easier to supervise. And some of the magic of building teams happens organically, as you said, in the corridors. And yet there's a big, strong desire from the workers to, you know what, it's really great not having to commute or just to be able to walk around in my slippers and do work from home and all that kind of stuff. Underneath all of this is the massive investment we've had over 50 years or more into these big, massive buildings. What are we going to do with them? Do you see a future for big buildings, big office buildings? Is there something that's going to happen to them?
I've started to see some unique use cases popping up, turning them into indoor gardening spaces, especially in areas that maybe aren't as conducive to growing plants and such. So I've started to see that use case. Turning them more into apartment living than office space is another one that's happened. I think that's going to be a real problem because we don't want to end up with dead city centers where all of our large buildings typically are. So I think as city planners and developers think about the future, I think they're going to have to rethink that because I don't think everybody's coming back to the office. There are going to be those that choose not to. Even if the company says thou shalt, they're going to say, no, this isn't for me. I kind of like working in my slippers. And I think we're going to have that tension for quite a while. And I think a new generation of leader, a new generation of manager is going to come behind all of us and say, yeah, I can deal with that. I know how to work in those environments. And I think it's a different view of work in general rather than, hey, I've got to be there to grow my career. I've got to move up the corporate ladder. I think there's going to be a lot of people that opt into a different kind of lifestyle.
I agree. And I think those future leaders, as you say, that'll come behind us will need really strong skills in facilitation and culture management because those need to come to the fore when you're managing people remotely. You can't just sort of press play on their work and expect the culture to do its thing on its own or for them to feel included and valued, et cetera. And I think that's a big ask, or a new ask, I should say, on leaders. Because I think, as I said, it's easier when people are all in the same place. You can get by with not facilitating and not really paying too much attention to the culture until it goes south.
Right.
I think those are things that are going to come to the fore for sure. Okay, so this is all really so exciting, this stuff. Let's take a break and go to the Fast Five. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So I talked about some of the future tech I most want, the virtual reality stuff, which would be awesome. What future tech do you most want now?
I'm with you. I think the virtual reality, it's probably why it was top of mind as we were talking earlier. I think bringing that into work now, I'm excited about what it can do.
Okay, awesome. What's the best tip you ever got for leadership?
Shut up and listen.
Yep, that's a good one. That's a perennial that'll never grow old. Yep. Number 3, what's one problem at work you'd love to wave a magic wand and be fixed right now?
I wish we could solve the diversity, equity, and inclusion and just have inclusive work environments that are equitable to everyone. We have been, especially we in technology, have been struggling with that for a long time. And it doesn't seem like even after decades of effort, we've moved the needle much. I'd love to wave the wand and fix that.
That's lovely. Yeah. I think that the gender and diversity issues, we just get past all that gender, diversity, identity issues and just get to seeing us as humans and have it be equitable for all humans. I think I'd be happy with that too. All right. Number 4, thumbs up or thumbs down. This is where you get to give there was this radio show I grew up with, and they had a segment called beefs or bouquets. Where your beef was like, I'm going to complain about X, and the bouquet is I'm going to give a bouquet because they did something well. So kind of adapted it to this segment. Thumbs up or thumbs down. Who's a leader that you can single out that is doing something right, or a leader you think, oh my God, it's absolutely something we don't want to do?
I tell you, there's a gentleman that runs a SaaS software company here in Indiana. His name is Stephen Johns. And Steve has recently written a book called Fearless. And it's the story of the pandemic and the changes and decisions that had to be made in his organization during that time. And I tell you, it blows me away. I've had the opportunity, I've known Steve for a couple of years, and I've had the opportunity to talk to him while all this was going on, then a couple of years later, and just the leadership that he showed that organization and lessons for all of us was just tremendous.
Can you give us one of the lessons that you think stood out?
One of the things that he made so many good calls at the time. One of the things that he did, because the company was suffering economically, so their revenue dropped because of the pandemic, and they needed to reduce costs. So he said to his workforce, hey, we can only pay you 80% of your pay, but you only have to work 80% of your time. So he balanced that, right? He balanced the expectation, and the leadership team did the same thing that everybody else did. And that's just one example. Another thing that he committed to was sending an email update to the company every Friday, and incredibly transparent. Here's where we are financially. Here's what our forecast is. I mean, it was basically an inside look. Here's what our clients are saying. Here's what our prospects are saying. And he held true to that for a couple of years in doing that. And to me, that's just showing transparency. It's showing authenticity, both of which are huge lessons for leaders today.
Wow, that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. And the transparency piece, I think, is going to be an absolute trend that leaders are going to have to adopt for so many different reasons, and not least of which is some of the technology. I mean, blockchain technology has at its core being transparent in terms of being able to showcase and everybody see the transactions that are recorded on that platform. I might just park the blockchain conversation for a second. Stay on track here. That was question number 4, the Fast 5. Number 5 is your favorite leadership book or podcast.
Well, my new favorite podcast is this one. Does that count?
I love it when guests suck up to me. It's awesome.
I tell you, a leadership book, it's kind of a golden oldie now, is called Leadership and Self-Deception. And it's told in story form. And so you meet these characters and they go through their work. And really the lesson in there is that as leaders, we have to be able to look at ourselves without any of the guises of self-deception. We've got to cut through our own bowl and really look at who we are and what makes us tick. And I recommend that book. I've been recommending it for 15 years now, probably.
Great. I love a good recommendation. We'll definitely tee that up. That was fantastic. That was the Fast 5. The Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast is proudly sponsored by the Amplifiers Academy. It is an online self-paced leadership development program that you can join at any time and progress at your pace. There are very short video lessons, great checklists and resources and recommendations and book summaries, all there to help boost your leadership thinking and abilities. We focus on leading strategy, leading culture, leading change, and leading performance. So if you want a go-to resource that can help boost your strategic abilities immediately, check us out, Amplifiers Academy, on the zoerouth.com website. See you there. what's your understanding of how blockchain might affect future of work?
I think there's some real possibilities in blockchain. It was really almost too bad that cryptocurrency and blockchain got married together in people's minds, because blockchain itself, from a technology perspective, has lots of opportunities. You think of things like smart contracts that can manage themselves, so to speak, once they're written. Imagine attorneys writing software. That's kind of the idea behind that. Real estate transactions that become blockchain transactions so that you can tie ownership. And here in the U.S., when you're buying a home, there's this huge process of doing a title search to make sure that no one has any liens on that property. Well, it would eliminate the need to go through that process. Sorry to all the people that work in the title companies, but blockchain could replace that and eliminate that. And I think there's lots of other applications within our businesses where blockchain could be used to validate information, make sure that information is true and accurate all the way through its life cycle.
I agree. I think there's some cases now where organizations are using it for documenting source origin of their product, so they can say, hey, we really are doing the right thing by our workers, if it's an animal production company or a plant-based company, saying we're being completely transparent. You can track it because once it's posted on the blockchain, it's immutable. It can't be changed and everybody can see it. And I think that's going to be the level up game in so many different sectors, that if you want to prove your mettle, that you are doing the right thing, you're on the blockchain. And if you're not, why not?
Yes. Absolutely.
So I love that as a tie back to one of the trends that's going to be happening in leadership in workplaces is the whole idea of transparency and being open and upfront about your processes as an organization, whether it's hiring, firing, promotion, financials. You bet. You can't sweep anything under the carpet. So I think I'm hoping, this is my optimist part of me, this will elevate leadership and it'll elevate organizations and cause them to think more deeply about what they're doing and the impact that they're having. And this might lead us to a more inclusive, equitable, and abundant world. That's what I'm hoping for. So one of the things you like to talk about, and that's sort of, we've been future focused, is history. And what are some leadership lessons from history that you think are useful for us to contend with looking forward?
Oh, that is such a great question, because I think we can learn so much from the past that we can apply to the future. And I probably spent the last 20 years of my career really looking at leaders of the past. It started for me, I hired an executive coach, and his coaching style was he would pick a figure from history, and then together you would study that person, study their life from birth to death, and pull out leadership lessons all around a general theme. So for example, I really wanted to work on the ability to manage upward, to manage my own boss, right? And have impact up the hierarchy. And Dan Miller, my executive coach at the time, chose President Theodore Roosevelt from the U.S. And we studied Roosevelt's life from his birth in 1858 till his death, but always pulling out those lessons of how do you manage up? How did he interact with his parents? As he got older, how did he interact with his bosses? As he became president, how did he interact with world leaders? And you pull out those lessons. And for me, there was just dozens and dozens and dozens of lessons. One of my favorites that I talk about a lot is the art of journaling, the art of keeping a journal. It's a leadership tool that in many ways we've seemed to have lost touch with. When you look at leaders of history, many of them kept journals. And it's kind of a lost art, as I've said. Modern day times, it's been said that Sir Richard Branson always has a journal nearby so that he can write ideas down in it. And other leaders you hear about from time to time that keep journals. But what it does is it helps you gain clarity, because you can, there's brain chemistry that kicks in when you're writing in a journal. It activates different parts of your brain. So you can think about a problem and you can write about a problem. Helps you in your decision-making process because you can weigh pros and cons. But one of the things that I think is truly amazing about the using journaling as a leadership tool is when you go back and reread your journals. They're just not a one and done. You go back and read them 6 months later, a year later, 2 years later. And what happens, Zoe, is that the lessons are different. The lessons have changed because you have changed and your environment has changed. And so you get this really evergreen leadership lesson book that you've written yourself. Back 5 years ago, I had this problem and this is the way I handled it. I wouldn't do that today. Today, I'd do this, right? And it helps you with that. So those are just a few of them.
I really like that. I'm a big journaler as well. And I like to go back and see what was happening 3 years ago in my world and what was I worrying about and how did those things play out, And I think it's useful to give you some sort of sense of perspective. Like, this was the thing that was confronting me and felt so enormous, and really didn't need to worry about it because A, I got it handled if it was a big decision, or B, just fizzled out and disappeared as a false fear. So studying history of yourself, I think, is really useful. And there's I wish I could remember who recommended this as a decision journal. You kind of alluded to it too. It's where you document what is the decision you need to make, what are the factors that you put into that decision, what the outcome was. So you can review your decision-making process over time and build on that. The other thing I do with my journaling. Oh, sorry. Did you want to add?
No, I just say incredibly powerful to be able to do that.
Yeah. Otherwise, things happen. It's just like, if you don't stop and reflect, they kind of disappear down the river and they're lost. One of the other things I recommend to clients that I do as well for myself is to document successes every day, whether it's something that you process success, like I wrote a blog article, or I read a book, or wrote something, blah, as well as an outcome success, which is landed a new client or met a goal, etc. And that way you start to pay attention to the things that are going well in your world, and you can look back and see the cumulative effect of your successes, which is also really powerful.
Yep. Celebrating the victories no matter the circumstances. There's victories that are there. Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, that's one of the ways he was able to turn that organization around. When he came to the organization, was by celebrating those daily victories. We forget to do that as leaders, and doing that, sometimes it seems like, oh yes, I wrote a blog post, good for me, right? But that's really not what it's doing. Celebrating a victory as a leader marks the milestone, but it also helps you transition to what is next. And I think we forget to do that. And keeping those thoughts in a journal is a wonderful way of celebrating those daily victories so you can move on to what you're going to do the next day.
Yeah, it gives you a boost, absolutely, because leadership can be a lonely, hard road. And sometimes you need to remember how far you've come and not just how far you have to go, which I think that perspective is also really helpful. So second last question. There's a lot going on there in the tech space. How do you keep up? And I have to say, I find it a bit overwhelming myself. I've got a couple of key blogs that seem to flood in my inbox every day. I'm like, okay, what new thing is happening in AI, or as an example, because there's so much stuff going on with that. How do you actually keep up so you don't feel like you're drowning in all the things that are happening?
I don't know that you can keep up with everything. I think you have to pick some areas that really pique your interest and try to keep up with those. through blogs, through podcasts, through other avenues, news channels of what's going on in the tech space. What I used to do when I ran a team was I would encourage the team to identify areas that they were interested in, and we would do lunch and learns occasionally. And so they would report back in, here's what's going on in this space, so that you hear a little bit of it and you kind of tuck that away in the back of your mind. But I think that's one of the challenges, whether you're in technology or in business. And as I say that, I'm thinking, I don't know anybody that's in business that's not also in technology. I think most businesses today leverage technology in some way. You have to keep a pulse on what things are happening in general. And then the art comes in is which ones are going to impact my business positively or negatively. I think one of the skills of a visionary leader is the ability to stand in the future and imagine that future that's different than our current reality. So you pull all these things together that seemingly are unconnected or disconnected, and in the future, maybe they're brought together. You start to look at today, we're talking a lot about autonomous vehicles and that. Well, you look at all the technology that's in that. 10 years ago were disparate technologies. People weren't talking about using them all in one place. And now they're all embedded in a vehicle. Someone saw that connection and brought them together. And I think that's part of the challenge that we have, is there's so much technology and is changing exponentially. Gordon Moore, who espoused Moore's law that technology would gain, he was talking about the chips, the actual computer chips, but he was basically saying that compute power would double every 2 years. And he said that over 50 years ago, and he was right. It has. And so when you talk about exponential growth, the speed is accelerating all the time. And you have to be able to pick out the pieces that are going to impact you and impact your business. And there's luck involved, there's art involved in trying to identify what those might be.
Yeah, and it's fun. I think picking one thing and having a club, I think, is really helpful advice too, where you can have a conversation about it. What could this mean for us, or for the world, or for the work, and just having the thought experiments around it is pretty cool. Jeff, this has been fantastic. Where can people find out more about you and your work?
So I love the LinkedIn platform. So I'm on LinkedIn. Would love to connect with your listeners there. My website is www.jeffreyston.com. That's JEFFREYSTON.com. Connect with me there. Would love to connect with all your listeners.
Awesome. Well, I think tech is definitely something that's going to create or be part of our world moving forward. And the more brains we have to make sense of that, to make forecasts of that, to decipher it and make it easier, the better. So thank you so much, Jeff, for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom. I really loved your stories and your insights.
My pleasure. I've enjoyed our conversation, Zoe.
Well, that was really fun talking with Jeff. He has so much great experience in the world of IT. I just love it. And I love being able to forecast and pontificate about what's coming for the future of leadership and the future of work. So that was awesome. Key takeaways for you, take action tips for you. Start a Fit for the Future club where you take turns in your team bringing up something that has happened out there, whether it's artificial intelligence or blockchain or ChatGPT, and showcasing what you learned about that particular thing that week and asking the question, what could this mean? Not what does it mean, because that's too prescriptive, and often we go down the rabbit warren of catastrophizing, but what could it mean? So that's the first tip. And the second one I love was the journaling one, of course. Learn from the past. Record in your journal the decisions that you're making, the worries that you're having, and what plays out. So you can study yourself, what worked, what didn't, what you could do better, and what you could do again. A tip of the week comes from my book, People Stuff. And this is in the sense-making chapter, in the first chapter of the book. One of the tips I like to share in my keynotes is, when in doubt, map it out. And in the book, People Stuff, there's a couple of different maps you can use. And one of the most significant ones, which is really useful for expanding perspective and also helping you and your team members see the bigger picture, is a systems map. That is basically a mind map of how the systems in your organization flow into one another. And you can start wherever, So customer calls up the organization. So customer inquiry, who handles that? What happens to it after that? What happens when they purchase something? What happens when they receive something? Where does the money go? Where does the supervision go? How do people get promoted? You can map all that stuff out. And in doing so, you can see the hotspots. The hotspots of effect, of outcomes, if you like. So where are the hotspots that lead to the golden nirvana of the outcomes that you're after in your business? And where are the hot spots which get in the way of that? What are the causal effects of both the good outcomes and the negative outcomes? And in doing the systems flow of the organization, you can see where you've got trouble spots, where there's opportunities to fine tune and to fix particular interpersonal conflicts or systems conflict. And often those two are quite linked. So when in doubt, map it out. Coming up next on the show, we have got Constance Dietrichs, and we are talking about artificial intelligence and decision-making. It's sure to be a good one. And just remember that we are in the middle of a giveaway. Dun, 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 dun. If you want to listen to The Olympus Project, which is my near-future speculative fiction book about building the first community on the moon, and it's the race, the tender to put that whole enterprise together, and the dynamics that go along with that, and the leadership considerations that go into creating a community on the moon, then that is The Olympus Project. It's got lots of 5-star reviews, and I had it professionally produced in an audiobook format. And if you'd like to listen to that for free on Spotify, I still have some codes left, and it's first in, first dressed to do it. And this is how you can get access to that. If you share the episode, any episode of my podcast on the social media platforms, and I realize I'm not on every platform, so the ones that I am on are LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Any of those 4, if you share something about the podcast, like you liked it, that you listened to this particular episode, whatever, and you tag me, then I will get in touch and I will send you a specific code where you can listen to The Olympus Project for free. Woohoo! Yay! Good for the month of July or until the codes run out. Also, if you don't want to participate in that, you can still rate, review, or share the podcast. It really does help get the word out. And we're into the 300s of episodes of the show. So we've been going a long time, and we really do appreciate your support. And it really does help boost the listenership when you do share it. In the meantime, have a great week. Live well, lead well.
You've been listening to the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast. To find out more about leadership of the future or to contact Zoe, go to zoerouth.com.